Hello and welcome to the Deepdale Podcast. I'm Jason Borthwick, it's February 2024, and this month we are chatting about interesting places to visit in North Norfolk. Dr. David Waterhouse of the Scott Polar Research Institute joins me to chat about the Deep History Coast. Ben and Adam from Roarr tell us some of the history of their North Norfolk attraction, and Sophie from Holkham gives us a glimpse of what's coming up at the historic family estate. A couple of bits of news before we get into the conversations. The event programme in Burnham Deepdale is really warming up in the next few weeks. The pop-up shops at Dalgate Market begin in March, and the Deepdale Camping and Rooms crew hold their annual Deepdale Hoog Festival the weekend before Easter. And the crew have also just launched this year's Deepdale Festival, which takes place on the last weekend of September. There are some amazing artists already announced. Head to deepdalecamping.co.uk/events for more information on all of these events and many, many more. Please do let us know of chats or features you'd like to hear on this podcast. Just email podcast@deepdalecamping.co.uk with your suggestions. Enjoy the listen, and we hope we'll see you in North Norfolk sometime soon.
Skies all open wide, geese go high and over. Oh, now you're a beachcomber, a fistful of sandfire, sea, lavender, see you next year.
I am chatting to a fellow bearded man, Mr. David Waterhouse. Are you professor or doctor? Doctor David Waterhouse, who is a man of great knowledge about the Deep History Coast, which we're going to learn more about, which is a part of the North Norfolk coast. And he is currently at the Polar Museum at the Scott Polar Research Institute at Cambridge University. So be able to explain to us a lot more about this whole Deep History Coast. Very welcome to the Deepdale Podcast, David. Lovely to have you with us. Thank you for joining us.
No problem, Jason. Nice to see you.
Where is the Deep History Coast? I think it's probably the starting point, isn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, Deep History Coast is technically the whole of Norfolk. We've been a little bit loose with it, coast. There's sites even towards Thetford that are
okay. So that's not really what you describe as coastal, but
No, but as far away from the coast in Norfolk as you can get. But we're kind of saying, the county is a coastal county.
Yeah, very fair.
So most of the coast, or all of the coast, and actually don't tell them, but even there's some important sites just over the border in Suffolk as well.
No, we don't talk about that. That's fine. You need a passport for that and stuff. Exactly. So that's yeah.
But one of the most important parts of the Deep History Coast is North Norfolk, and that includes some of the oldest finds that we've got and some of the most important finds. And North Norfolk District Council have been working with for a number of years, have put up a series of what we call discovery points. So you can go to these places along the coast and you can find out more from these information boards and discover things for yourself. So that's essentially where Deep History Coast is and where you can find out a little bit more in the landscape.
Got you. And where does the Deep History Coast sit sort of historically in comparison? People will have heard of the Jurassic Coast because the Deep History Coast is sort of, although it's not new, clearly, it's a sort of a new sort of marketing thing, isn't it, in terms of kind of the history of it. So, but lots of people will know about the Jurassic Coast. So where do the two sort of sit in history?
Absolutely. And I wouldn't say it's a shameless rip-off of Jurassic Coast, but it is very similar, and I suppose it's Norfolk's version. It's similar in its kind of structure, but as you say, historically it's slightly different. Jurassic Coast, the Jurassic period was about 150 million years ago. Deep History Coast is quite flexible. We start that old in the west of the county. We've got some Jurassic sediments. We come forward into the Cretaceous period, this period that includes most of the chalk that we've got in Norfolk, and that's between about 100 million and 70 million years old. And then it's such a flexible term, we can bring it right up to near history, even the sort of Second World War. So it's a really wide time frame, if you like. We kept it purposely flexible.
One of the big sort of images that everybody sees when they visit the thing is the mammoth, isn't it? There has been lots of mammoth finds, haven't there?
Yeah, so believe it or not, Norfolk is one of the best places in the world to study and find bits of mammoth. I think when we think of mammoth, we think woolly mammoth. That's the image we conjure up in our heads. We've seen them in films and on TV programs. They're relatively recent, within the past few thousand years, known for the Ice Age. Norfolk has got evidence of lots of different elephants. So mammoth is just a type of elephant, essentially a hairy elephant. And we've got animals called mastodons. We've got straight-tusked elephants. We've got southern mammoth, steppe mammoth, and woolly mammoth, all within the past about 5 million years within the fossil record of Norfolk. So really important place to study them. Yes, we've got some woolly mammoth remains, but some of the larger mammoths were earlier than woolly mammoths. And that when I mentioned the steppe mammoth, so spelt like the Russian steppe, Steppe, was possibly one of the biggest elephants ever to have lived. And we had those in Norfolk. And I was very lucky in my previous job as curator of natural history at Norfolk Museum Service to have curated, so looked after the bones of the West Runton mammoth, which was a steppe mammoth and the largest and the oldest mammoth ever found in Britain. So really, really important, and found just, on the Deep History Coast at West Runton. And we've used the West Runton mammoth as the logo for Deep History Coast. If you look at the logo, you'll see it's got the map of Norfolk there, the mammoth in front. And if you look very carefully, his back right knee kind of sticks out slightly. And that's because we know the West Runton mammoth dislocated his right knee, and that's essentially how he died. So just a little tidbit there. If you know it's there, you see his dislocated knee.
I'm never going to be able to look at that in quite the same way now. That makes a lot of sense. I can see it. I'm looking at the logo right now, and you can see that knee. And I would never have guessed that in a million years. So I'm glad you've explained that. Yeah, that's a quiz question. That's a pub quiz question.
Yeah.
People who go off exploring, particularly where the cliffs are collapsing, and they kind of, there'll be another collapse, and they'll sort of have a look around, and they'll find things like woolly mammoth teeth, or mammoth teeth. They probably aren't woolly mammoth, but that sort of thing, which I find is quite incredible, that you can still. It seems bizarre that something that kind of we associate with sort of the Ice Age movies, you can go and find bits of that same animal just by literally walking along the beach.
Yeah, and that's what makes Deep History Coast so kind of democratic, if you like. Anyone can go and walk down one of our beaches in Norfolk and have the potential to find something that could be groundbreaking. So the West Runton mammoth was discovered after a storm in December in the early 90s by a couple of locals from Sheringham. And they reported it to Cromer Museum. The important thing to remember about those cliffs, you mentioned the cliff falls, they are quite dangerous. You don't want to be digging into those. And in fact, most of the cliffs in Norfolk are sites of special scientific interest, which means that you basically have to have planning permission to dig into them. So what my predecessors did, they applied to North Norfolk District Council for planning permission. So normally you do that to build a bungalow or an extension. They applied to dig up a mammoth. They got the permission, and they dug up what we now know is the largest and oldest mammoth in Britain. And there's been things relating to humans as well. So hand axes, these stone tools made of flint, found by people walking their dogs on beaches, places like Haysborough. So once you've got a little bit of knowledge and you get your eye in, from children right up to grandparents, you can wander down our beaches and you can find these things. And as long as you report them in the right way, either to your local museum or places like British Museum, Natural History Museum, then they're known by the right people and they can be recorded. So it's a really lovely way to discover these things. I'd love to be on West Runton or Haysborough Beach every day looking for these things, but I can't. So it's, it's people like your visitors and people coming to Norfolk. Those are the important people, and they can make these discoveries.
There's just so much history, and I'm guessing that some of the museums along the coast have some really good stuff. Which ones are the sort of the best ones to visit?
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole idea of Deep History Coast was really to link those museums that we all go to when we're on holiday and things with the landscape. Normally you go to a museum, you see something in a glass case, and there's not really that link to where it came from. So you've got things. So if you take Cromer Museum, for example, there's bits of the West Runton Mammoth in Cromer Museum. I say bits because it's pretty big. We can't fit the whole thing in. That was one of the things I was looking into before I started my new job of trying to 3D print this giant mammoth and put it back together. So that's somebody else's job now.
That would be amazing if to have a sort of almost a sort of an aircraft hangar with this mammoth in it would be amazing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And there was a number of different places, it could maybe fit in the courtyard at Cromer Museum or at Norwich Castle or somewhere maybe outside. But anyway, you can before that's all happened, you can see bits of the West Runton Mammoth on display in Cromer Museum, and then of course you can go to the discovery points at Cromer. One of our sister museums in Sheringham, you can go there and see all sorts of fossils. And then there's things to see at the coast at Sheringham as well. You can see things like the Haysborough hand axe. So I mentioned hand axes, these flint tools. That's on display in Norwich Castle. But if you go to Haysborough, to the car park there's a discovery point there which tells you all about these ancient humans and the other amazing finds that were discovered at Haysborough. So yeah, lots of places you can go. Great Yarmouth, you can go to Time and Tide Museum and discover more about the coast there. So it really links that through when you're out walking or when it's bad weather and you want to go in a museum and find out more.
I'm assuming that all of that stuff is completely unrelated to things like Seahenge, of course, which is now in the King's Lynn Museum, isn't it? But I guess that all forms part of this wider sort of deep history coast, particularly if you're taking it right up to sort of the airfields of the Second World War and all of that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. That's a really important site to mention is Seahenge. That's Bronze Age. So we're talking a lot more recent, really. I'd work in millions of years. This is, a couple of thousand years old. And of course, that's been preserved and, as you say, put in the Lynn Museum. And then you've also got a really important Neanderthal site near Thetford, a place called Linford. And actually, that's not really on display anywhere. This is something that you'd need to find out a little bit more about. But Neanderthals were actually, we think, butchering woolly mammoths this time. This is about 55,000 years ago, near Thetford. And their stone tools and the mammoth bones are in the collections of Norfolk Museum Service. So there's lots of kind of untold stories that have been picked apart by Deep History Coast as well.
And I guess you could include places like Grimes Graves and things like that as well, couldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. The entire county is a treasure trove, really. And archaeologically speaking, Norfolk has more discoveries than anywhere else in Britain. So there's more archaeological finds in Norfolk than any other county. And that's partly because there's a really good relationship between the museums and people like metal detectors. So they're out finding things and they're showing things and sharing things, but partly just luck. We stick out into the North Sea. We're the first place that people come when they sort of migrate to Britain, and that's happened over the past million years or so. And we've got the right kind of age sediments when people were around, and so they're preserved here. So we're really, really lucky.
Can you just explain how the geography changed. Any visitor to Norfolk kind of is fairly aware of the shape of Norfolk now and the incredible coastline that we've got, which is our single biggest boundary, isn't it? It's longer than any of the boundaries with Suffolk or Cambridgeshire or with Lincolnshire. But yeah, I think it would just be fascinating to know how that area came to be, if you know what I mean, and how we ended up with things like the chalk reef and that sort of thing, and what formed that, basically.
So previous to about 9,000 years ago, we were joined to what's now Europe, and so Europe's joined to Asia. So before 9,000 years ago, you could literally walk from what's now Norfolk all the way to, look over Japan. The North, that's not to say that the North Sea wasn't there. The North Sea, if you kind of stood, say, at Cromer, looking out to what's now sea, you'd just see land all the way to Asia. If you looked north, the North Sea was there. So it was an embayment. So there was a big area of sea there to the north, but land all the way to the east. And then what happened was you had a big glacier, an ice sheet build up, sort of where Lincolnshire is and Yorkshire is now. And that slowly melted, and you got a huge glacial lake. So a big freshwater lake was building up and building up and building up, where the North Sea is now. And that eventually burst its banks and sort of rushed through, took away lots of the sediment on top of the chalk and scoured down into the chalk and eventually made the English Channel. So a catastrophic event, likened to the great flood of Noah, and that may even be a folk memory that people remember this flood and have passed down stories about it. And that's what made Britain an island. That was your original Brexit, if you like, when we first broke away from Europe. But over the past 5 million years, we've been through a number of cold phases and warmer phases, and as ice has formed and disappears, sea level has risen and fallen and risen and fallen. We even had coral reefs in the east of Norfolk. So you've got this layer of sediment called the coralline crag. So a craggy rock full of corals. It was warm, you had corals, you had dolphins, whales and sharks living there when the sea level was high, and then the sea level drops at other points in time. So really, really varied, and that's why we've got such great fossil record of these varied times in the past.
It's incredible, the history that, and it's understandable why we've gone for deep history coast and that level, because you've just explained about the way that the shape of Norfolk was formed is just most incredible. And to think that you could literally just wander across to Amsterdam and Rotterdam as they are now, and just keep walking all the way to Japan, it's just incredible, isn't it, really? That's truly incredible.
And people did, but nearly 1 million years ago, so at least 850,000 years ago, we know that people walked here from further south in Europe. Then we had another wave of people coming about 500,000 years ago. Then some more, then Neanderthals came, and then finally us. So Norfolk is the only region in the whole of Northwest Europe to have evidence of 4 different human species. So we're not talking about, different countries or races or things like that. We're talking species of humans. So the first lot who came here nearly 1 million years ago, their scientific name is Homo antecessor, but their English name is pioneer, man and woman. So the first lot come here, they were pioneers.
I prefer the pioneer thing. I think that's very cool. That really is kind of what's out there. Let's go and investigate.
Yeah. And then the second lot that came about 500,000 years ago is this species called Homo heidelbergensis. And they were first discovered in Heidelberg in Germany. So their English name is Heidelberg, man and woman. We now know that actually they were in Africa as well. So these names don't always tally with what we know about them now. The next lot were Neanderthals. And actually we overlapped with Neanderthals a little bit. And we know that most white Europeans have got up to 5% Neanderthal DNA in them. And what I really like is the fact that there weren't that many Neanderthals in their day when they were a species, because we've got some Neanderthal DNA in us as modern humans now, or at least some of us. There's more Neanderthal DNA around in the world now than there was when Neanderthals were a species.
That's
which
bizarre,
is
isn't it?
kind of weird.
That's a really surreal thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then of course we were here as well. So these four species, Pioneer, Heidelberg, Neanderthal, and us, have all lived in Norfolk. To go back to Pioneer man and woman, they are, we think they were here because we haven't actually got any of their bones. We've just got some stone tools and some footprints that were discovered at Haysborough on the North Norfolk coast.
Got you. So yeah, this is the Haysborough footprint, which was found when the tide after a storm, wasn't it? And it scarred away the sands and the mud.
Yeah, that's right. So in May 2013, there was spring storms, scoured away the sand at Haysborough. And actually we were there I was there with colleagues from the British Museum and Natural History Museum doing some routine dating. So we'd be taking little samples of sediment to take away to try and work out how old the different layers were. And the sand got scoured away and there were all these kind of divots, I suppose, in the sediment there. And it looked like fresh mud, greyish kind of estuary mud. But actually, if you or I would jump up and down on it, we wouldn't have made a footprint. We know that these were ancient and they were uncovered by erosion. Lots of experts came from all around the UK to have a look at them, and they did turn out to be human footprints. Some of them you could see where the big toe was and the little toes, the arch of the foot. And through lots of analysis, they worked out it was an adult male with size 9 feet, about 5'7". So that is basically describing me. So some of
You've
my
been jumping around in the mud, haven't you?
well, me, but nearly a million years ago, and a different species. But an adult male, then probably an adult female, slightly smaller size feet, and then at least 2, possibly 3 children. And what I love about it is the adults were walking in pretty much a straight line, north-south, and the children were running all around. And this links us as humans today, can imagine that happening with any family today walking on the beach. And that links this other species of human nearly a million years ago doing exactly the same thing. I suppose the only difference is there was added jeopardy then because we had spotted hyenas, European jaguar, some probably pretty angry mammoths around, rhinos, hippo, and the odd lion as well. So there was
a very angry mammoth. He dislocated his knee,
yeah.
So there you go.
This is it. So it was a little bit more dangerous.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Really fascinating. And if any of you out there want to know more, there's lots of information on website, but on various websites, as I say, which we will link through to. But also David and John Davies have produced an amazing book called Exploring Norfolk's Deep History Coast. Alice Roberts, who I'm a big fan of, describes it as fascinating and illuminating. So really worth getting a copy of, and we'll make sure there's links to that. You can read that through, and that all links up all of this amazing information that we've just heard from David. Thank you so much. It's really nice to have you on the podcast. And yeah, I think this one will be one that people listen to again and again. Try and make notes from those incredible amounts of information that you've given us in a very short time. But thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. Nice to see you again, Jason.
Great to talk to you. I am chatting to 2 gentlemen from one of our unexpected parks, I think, attractions, we could describe it as, in North Norfolk. It's full of dinosaurs. It kind of fits sort of with the deep history coast that you've just heard. But the idea is that you can go and enjoy being surrounded by these dinosaurs. And the whole place is called Roarr, and it's kind of more than that. So I'm going to get these 2 to explain it. They'll explain it much better than I have. Welcome to Deepdale Podcast, both Adam and Ben. Thank you very much for joining me. So Ben, you are the park manager, and Adam, you are the park director. In a nugget, what, Ben, would you say Roar is all about?
Roarr is a fully immersive dinosaur themed adventure park for the entire family, and it's full of activities, entertainment, hands on history, and fun for everyone to put their mobile phones down and make memories as a family.
You've done that before.
No,
Adam,
that was brand new. Got no one standing there with cue cards.
Adam is looking very proud of you. He's very, very happy. He feels you've got everything into that one little description. That's cool. So, okay, so breaking it down, you've got a lot of park. There's a lot of lovely parts of the park to wander around. But what else is there kind of to see and do? What are the kind of the top attractions in your attraction?
I think we've got over 20 individual attractions, but our key ones, I think, are definitely Valley of the Dinosaurs, which is a walk through the woods with the animatronic dinosaurs and to see all of the dinosaurs in their natural habitat. Dippy Splash Zone, which is our water play, where people from April onwards can go and jump about in the water, and probably on a hot summer's day where the majority of our guests are found. We've got Predator High Ropes, which opens in the summer on a full working day, first time's April, which is the highest salt course in the air, which I personally loathe, but other people I think love, because I hate heights with a passion. And I was forced to get on it actually last year, but it's not anything that I choose to do. Then we've got our new rides that went in last year. So Raptor, Contraptor and Swingosaurus, which are both fully accessible rides in Discoveryland at the bottom of the park. And then if the fifth one, mainly because I'm biased, would be Dippy's Theatre, where we have the live shows with Dippy and his friends, and Dippy's Movie Time and Dippy Live. And it's just a really great place to go for 15, 20 minutes and get fully immersed in song, dance, and seeing Dippy up to his adventures.
Adam, you're part of the family, the dynasty that runs Roar and is Roar. Kind of, what's the history? How did someone somewhere think North Norfolk needs dinosaurs?
Great question. In 1984, a gentleman called Roy Benton acquired the estate, and he had a golf club, and it used to be an old shooting estate, basically. The golf club, as it still does today, costs money to run. And to make some money, he came up with a quirky idea of putting some dinosaurs in the wood. I think because in Norfolk somewhere, not too far from the park, located in Norwich, there were some molds of some dinosaurs that could be made. And that was a quirky idea I think he had for some business contacts he had. And there it began.
Excellent. Where did you come from? What were you doing before you got involved?
So from the age of 9, I worked because I lived and grew up inside Banham Zoo, since I was born. And then 9 years old, I had my first job put to work by my father, working outside the zoo entrance, running the bouncy castle and the Crazy Putt golf course. From there on in, I went to school. Weekends and holidays, I worked in every single department within the zoo, getting to earn my pocket money and grasp the nature of the family-run business.
And how about you, Ben? Before you were looking after dinosaurs and Dippy Circus, what were you up to?
I was working for a charity in Wales next to the sea, actually, and started working here 15 years ago just as a scare actor at Primeval. And then my involvement with the business grew, and then I transferred across here, I think 6 years ago now, as the events manager initially, and then was promoted to park manager 3 years ago this year, I think.
Segues nicely, because the older visitors who are kind of probably slightly outgrown your more child-friendly aspects of the park, they may well know you for the stuff that scares the bejesus out of me and is not my cup of tea at all. But how did the whole sort of Halloween thing come about?
Most of it came out of Martin's twisted mind, to be perfectly honest. It started off as most things at Roarr do, where it started off as there was a market from our Halloween daily event, which was aimed at families. I think then, because it was quite popular, it then moved to the evening and became an evening ghost walk kind of feel. At the same time as that was happening here in America, scare mazes and scare attractions were becoming quite big, and Martin took notice of that, and then Primeval started to evolve. I remember there being a couple of years where there was a crossover where there was still a family-friendly walk.
Yes, we did that one, yeah.
And then 2 terrifying mazes for adults only attached to it. And I think ultimately Martin could see the possibilities and the success of it. So we dropped the family side and left that to the daytime, and then just went full in on Primeval, which has now grown and grown and grown to the monster that it is today.
So how many crew are involved, and cast and crew are involved with the Primeval?
Last year we had about 130 actors.
Oh my word.
And then on top of that, we have the whole infrastructure of the operations team who run the park in the daytime and then switch over. And then we have a tech team of 4 per night, plus the management structure of 3 who are there every night. First aid, security. Is quite a big production now.
And how many people do you get through? Is it a fortnight, a sort of week, or a fortnight or something?
Last year we did 17 nights over 4 weeks. And I think we saw about 23,000.
Wow. Yeah. So that's another big part of the Roarr world, isn't it, really? That must take, a whole year to prepare for, from one year to the next.
Yeah, we've already had our debrief on Primeval from last year, and we've got our first proper production meeting in the next couple of weeks to start planning it. Because everything we do in-house. So it has to be really well managed alongside the park running. And obviously our lead up to Halloween is right when the park is at its peak for daytime guests. So it's about making sure the resource is in the right place and that we get everything done. And it doesn't matter how well we plan it. Primeval is always a frantic run at the end because there's just so much to get done. And because every year we challenge ourselves to be bigger and better, to meet the guest expectations, because it is the thing which is you can come to the park and you don't need to have children. Primeval is for everyone, which we also started adapting that model for Christmas with our Christmas event Sparkle, is that the park is accessible to everyone. So in the evening, our events have got to be of a quality that people can come in who haven't got kids and have a great time.
If people want to know more, check out more information, where do they head online? What's the web address?
www.roarr.co.uk.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, gents. Really kind of you to join me. Great to hear about one of the premier tourist attractions in our area, and something that not everybody would expect to find just down the road from Deepdale. But thank you so much, and I hope it is an absolutely superb season. I hope for those mad folk that go to your scary Halloween events that they enjoy Primeval. I'm afraid I will not be attending that one. My imagination is far too vivid as it is. It doesn't need encouragement.
Thanks for having us, and all the best to you at Deepdale, Jason.
I am chatting to Sophie from Holkham. Thought it'd be really nice to finish this podcast with a third chat about an amazing place that you can visit on the North Norfolk coast. So we've already heard about the Deep History Coast. We've already heard about Roarr, and now we're chatting about Holkham. And Holkham has an incredible history. It's just down the road from us up here on the beautiful North Norfolk coast. It is an amazing hall to wander around, incredible parklands, but it also has a deep history, and also an incredible array of events that happen there all the way through the year. I'm hoping Sophie is going to enlighten us with some more information about some of the many reasons to go and visit this amazing park. So welcome to Deepdale Podcast, Sophie. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Jason. I mean, I'm obviously very biased because I adore Holkham and I think it's a wonderful place. I wouldn't work here otherwise. But yeah, there are all sorts of reasons to come and visit us this year. And I think for me, if I were to actually answer that from a visitor point of view, it's just because I know that I can come here with my friends one day to do one activity, and then I could visit with my family on another and do something else on that day. So it's always quite varied. And as part of the events team, that's what we're always trying to do, come up with lots of different reasons for people to return and learn something new at Holkham and experience something different. So that can vary from doing our tractor trailer rides, which are fantastic for families, and you can learn all sorts of fun activities and history about the estate, and that can go all the way up to much larger events. I'm sure you may have heard, but we're actually hosting the Bear Grylls Gone Wild Festival this summer, which we're really excited about. We've got all sorts of events for people, big and small, whether they're up here on holiday or if they're local and just sort of want to pop along to one of our markets or something.
The program of events is really varied, isn't it? So if you're looking through your website, which if anybody needs to know more information, holkham.co.uk, you've got things like wellbeing walks, you have your regular park runs, you've got walking women courses, evening talks by people like Jake Fines, you've got Easter fun, springtime stuff, markets, hikes. It's just it's such a varied, interesting program of activities and events. And
this year we are looking at our family events a little bit differently, actually. So sort of some feedback we've had is that a lot of people want to sort of really enjoy the hall, and normally our hall's only open on Sundays, Mondays and Thursdays. So sometimes when people come up for Easter, for example, they might come on the day when the hall's not open. So this year for Easter, we've actually got 4 days in a row for our Springtime Superheroes event, which is the 31st of March to the 3rd of April. And every day for those 4 days in a row, we've got the hall opened, walled garden, and we've got some theatre happening. Squirrel Walnutkin Saves the Planet for families to come and enjoy, storytelling, a face painter. We're putting on some free arts and crafts, and we've also got the Junk Orchestra coming. So there's sort of these repurposed instruments made out of all sorts of materials, and children can have a go at sort of coming up with their own superhero theme, which we're quite excited about. And then we've also got our May event as well, Wild Wings and Flying Things, which is also the 26th to the 30th of May. And that's all sort of celebrating all things that can fly. So we've got Fence Falconry joining us, and we have so much fun, Jason, when we're putting together all of these ideas and concepts for our half terms. And we're really excited about them, and families do seem to like coming here, which is great for us.
that's fantastic. And I've enjoyed your park run a few times on the Saturday, and I've done some of your walking events, and it's just a beautiful place to be, which is the fantastic. And then the events are just a sort of the icing on the cake, really, in terms of encouraging you to enjoy your incredible part of the world. So it's really fantastic to have you guys on the doorstep. Can you tell me more about the museum, because you've got this amazing, very interactive history of farming, really, haven't you?
Obviously, in our history, farming is integral to the estate, and it's something we're all very passionate about. And I could go down the historical route, but we've got so many exciting stories to tell about farming here on the estate, and that's even looking towards the future with how we're trying to make farming more sustainable. So we actually have a museum on site called Holkham Stories, which kind of brings to life all the different stories and voices of people, past and present, who have lived on the estate and worked on the estate, and just sort of highlights and tells our story of the evolution of farming, but also there's just so many fantastic stories, and even stories like Lady Glenconnor have been included in it. And what we're quite excited about is we're actually launching a brand new room at the end of it. We're sort of redoing one of the rooms, and we're sort of internally we're calling it the Wonder Room, which is going to tell a bit more of a story about how we're looking to the future of the estate, which is very exciting.
Top 3 reasons for coming to visit Holkham, then?
Without doubt, it's the landscapes, it's the nature, the wildlife, the stories that we can tell, and also that other people can tell. It's such a beautiful setting, and it really is a fantastic place to just sort of escape the hustle and the bustle of just sort of everyday life and just really enjoy your surroundings.
I always remember my father when we're having arguments with the planners about something kind of minor, probably, and him saying, "Well, with the attitude, who's going to build the next Holkham?" And it is a fascinating the history of how kind of Holkham came about, and how this, as they say, sort of you build it and they will come. And of course, that was never the idea of the original Earl. That way, the idea was to just have an amazing house. But of course, he's created almost by accident this incredible place to visit with all of these other amazing sort of assets around it. So an amazing place. So thanks again, Sophie. Really lovely to talk to you. Thank you for listening to the Deepdale Podcast. Great to have your listening ears with us. You can find a large back catalogue of episodes on any good podcast app or directory. Simply search Deepdale Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, we'd love you to leave a review on your favourite podcast app. Hope 2024 is going well for you, and we'll see you soon.
Skies all open wide, geese go high and over. Oh, now you're a beachcomber, fistful of sandfire, sea, lavender, see you next year.